What is true feminine leadership? Hi, I'm Anne Margaret with this week's Sacred Sunday message to raise the vibration of your body, mind, and spirit. So, this week we lost a giant. The passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg sent shockwaves through this country and the world. For here's a woman who crashed those glass ceilings and paved the way for women in a way that brought gender equality. She fought against sexual discrimination and her own discrimination, obviously, and until the end, really fought for what she believed in. So, whether or not you agree with her politics, this woman was extraordinary. And I want to honor her today with this live, as well as talk about three other women in history I could pull from hundreds that have been inspiring in their leadership. But let's talk about that today and also look at what is feminine leadership versus masculine leadership. It's not just female male difference. Let's look at that. And thanks so much for joining me. All right, let's get started. So when I looked up feminine, I just for the heck of it looked up what feminine was stated as in the dictionary to see what it said. And it really just for the most part said, oh, it's similar to a woman having feminine like qualities or like female. So it wasn't very helpful. But then when I saw a couple of depictions of how the word feminine is used in art, in poetry, in music, it is used in a way that it says like a feminine ending in a rhyme is such that it's unstressed. So if you think about Shakespeare, you've got unaccented and accented syllables. In a poem or a rhyme, it talks about having a feminine ending if it's not a stressed ending, which I thought was interesting. And then also in music too, if the chord that's the final chord of a musical production or a musical song or a piece ends on a what they call a weak beat, that's also referred to as a feminine beat. And this doesn't have to mean weak, it could mean just unaccented or not stressed. More of a space of holding rather than out there and intentional with uh, a real loud or pronounced presence. And I think in talking about this in feminine leadership is fascinating and using that word feminine because leadership, and we've been in a very masculine led world for a very long time. So, do we even know what feminine leadership looks like? We have a lot of women who have put on the suits or played the games or broken those glass ceilings and shattering that limitation for women when it comes to playing the game for men, at playing man's game. But what is true feminine leadership? So let's take a look at a few different examples of women who have been notoriously incredible leaders through history, renowned leaders, and see if we can kind of navigate this today together. So, uh, one quote that I love of RGB is real change, enduring change happens one step at a time. I think leadership and consistency, whether it be masculine or feminine, that consistency is huge and the patience of that is huge. And in order for us to be leaders in our own lives or leaders in the world, we need a consistency, a one step at a time belief in the vision towards which we're moving. So I love that quote of hers. And another thing that she said too, which I think points to true embodiment of class or of true charisma as a leader, and I don't mean class like financial class breaks, but I mean holding an integrity and a classiness to be your morality in your leadership. And she said this, she said, you can disagree without being disagreeable. Isn't that incredible? Don't we need to hear that as a country, especially more than anything right now? So let's go into a little bit of her background because for 27 years, this extraordinary woman served as an associate justice on the Supreme Court. And she was only the second woman to do this. Sandra Day O'Connor was the first. And when Sandra Day O'Connor retired, uh, Ginsburg was the only woman on the Supreme Court for 3 years until a second one came on. And during this time, as the only woman, she was very vocal in her dissent, very much raised her voice in a very unapologetic way, knowing that she was the mouthpiece for quite a bit. No, maybe as a woman you don't feel like she's a good mouthpiece for you or was. Maybe you do, but she used her voice in the way that she believed was right. She felt like she was making a difference for what she truly cared about. And that is, if we all spoke up in that way, the world would be a very different place. And she was also famous for saying, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made." Couldn't agree more with that one. Okay. So when she was serving, even before she was on the Supreme Court, this woman, she went to Harvard Law School and then transferred to Columbia, where she was only one of 9 women out of 500, a class of 500 men in her graduating class. And guess what? She was tied as the number one in that class upon graduation. And after graduation, even despite a lot of people trying to open doors for her into this very male dominated field, she had a very tough time securing the position as a woman. And even when she became a professor at Rutgers, they even told her they weren't going to pay her the same because she had a husband making a good income at home, even though that she was a woman doing the same work as her colleagues, wasn't paid the same. So she really took it upon herself to fight for the civil liberties of the gender equality of being able to fight also for against sexual discrimination. Let me check my notes as I wrote a couple things down I wanted to mention to you guys. That she co-founded the first law journal in the U.S. to focus exclusively on women's rights. Women's rights. This woman stood behind us every step of the way. She was the first also tenured teacher at Columbia Law School, and she co-founded the Women's Rights Project at the ACLU. And she, out of 6 cases that she argued before the Supreme Court on gender discrimination, she won 5. This was quite a powerhouse, and I know everyone is going to feel the impact of this. But before we all turn this political, we just need to really recognize the incredible life that this woman led. So let's look about a couple other, I wanted to reference a couple other women that have been extraordinary and used leadership in a different way. I want to backtrack all the way to Elizabeth I. So she was the Queen of England. She was the daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, and she was declared illegitimate. And when she came into power, she had a lot of pressure on her as a woman to produce an heir. And she had many suitors, but nothing really felt right. So she knew in order to be taken seriously, she needed to kind of sidestep her being a woman and take her femininity and morph it or alchemize it into something that her country could get behind and stop looking at her as a woman who just wasn't producing an heir. There is an incredible movie, Elizabeth, where the beautiful actress Kate Blanchett miraculously embodies this incredible, incredible energy. And there is a wonderful moment and a scene where she realizes that she cannot effectively lead and still embody herself as the woman that she was and enjoying that femininity. So what she does is she paints herself completely white, and we see this in beautiful depictions and paintings of this monarch. And then after that, she is hailed as the Virgin Queen. She embraced this aspect of herself, didn't see it as a weakness for not producing an heir, but she embodied the greatness of this leadership without the conformities of what the pressures were being put on her at the time. Very unique choice of this leader. And then I want to also point to Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa embodied the mother archetype probably better than any other person, any other woman in history. I know that could be argued by many different incredible women because there are many. But she created the charities, I think it's the Missionaries of Charity, and brought in every single kind of outcast in the world, the motherless, the lepers, the homeless, the disabled. She did everything she possibly could, the crippled, the blind, the people who all were the outcasts of society. She gave them a space to be, to belong, to be cared for. And the mother archetype, she didn't seek fame, she didn't seek fortune, she didn't have a political agenda. She just came from that place and that conviction of her own faith. Tremendous, tremendous feminine leadership, tremendous embodiment of that mother archetype. And lastly, I really couldn't have this talk without talking about Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt not only once she became First Lady, completely transformed that role of First Lady of the White House. But she came from a childhood that was not easy. Her mother died at 8, her father died at 10, he even attempted suicide and died of a seizure quite soon after that. She suffered her entire life of depression and really felt the depths of the pain of the human experience. And when she married her husband, she even incurred uh, a betrayal, and he cheated on her. And rather than leave him or grow really bitter or reject him or whatever she could have done, punish him, she actually chose to use that to seek fulfillment in a life of public service. So she transformed that and devoted herself to that. And when her husband suffered paralysis and lost the usage of her legs, she still encouraged him to lead a life of service, still in the public eye. She stepped in when he couldn't make public appearances and represented him, even though she didn't agree with everything he said. And she publicly disagreed with him and had the courage to do that as a woman at that time was extraordinary. And being the first lady, she knew pretty much all of the first ladies from the 20th century. So when she stepped into that role in the White House, she was not thrilled, to say the least. She was not really interested in just being a domestic housewife and hostessing. She wanted to make a true difference. And man, did she ever. She held regular press conferences. She had her own weekly radio show. I mean, she wrote for a daily newspaper column. Uh, she did so much to empower women across the board and maintaining her dignity, her loyalty to her husband. And she was even famous for saying, I wanted to quote her here because she's extraordinary. She always felt like an ugly duckling too, right? And women today, I could go off another tangent, I won't, but she said, no matter how plain a woman may be, if truth and loyalty are stamped upon her face, all will be attracted to her. This is extraordinary for us in this time where we are all about proper lighting, perfectly washed makeup, what do you call it? Airbrushing, trying to be the perfect size, the perfect, all based on appearance. But we know that there's nothing more beautiful than somebody who speaks from their heart, authentic truth, and standing for everyone's sovereignty, everyone's dignity, the dignity of every woman and man and child. So just a shout out to her. So this this idea of feminine leadership, like how do we as women know how to harness the archetypes of the male leadership, but also still keep our femininity. I know being a woman and a small business owner, there were times when I faced outrageous, I think words and criticisms and treatment, and I do not think I would have received that if I were a man. Like it was very clear to me that that wouldn't have been the case. But how do we maintain our femininity as women and still be be effective leaders? I remember I took leadership courses back at the beginning of my 20s, and they would always emphasize, oh, you have to wear a suit to be considered an effective leader, and you have to look like this, and you have to. What if we blew that all up and had the leadership come from within, recognizing the power of the feminine to hold this space, to nurture? It's not always the easier way to do, right? The teachers who are teaching their students, I know this firsthand from leading teacher trainings, but in the schools and the colleges, it's much easier to tell somebody this is how you do it and do it. Repeat it back, parrot it back. If you don't do it the way I told you to do it, then it's not right. That's a very masculine, very linear approach. It's much harder to be a leadership and to nurture the leadership in your students and in others in your community. But it is so worthwhile. So, in that teacher training experience, I probably had 90% of my students really engage in the depth of what they went through. And then I had about 10% who gave me a lot of backlash. But I knew it was because I was asking them to step into their own leadership and hold that space and that femininity. Can we do that for each other? Can we still maintain that feminine leadership? I believe we can. So, you guys, shout out to Ginsberg and all the beautiful leaders, all of the women who are standing together and honoring this incredible leader. All right, keep raising the vibration. Women's Circle is tonight. And the autumnal equinox celebration is tomorrow. If you need some one-on-one coaching, just reach out to me. But thanks so much for joining me today. And until next time, keep raising the vibration. All right, bye, everybody.